there, thinkers. Welcome back to another episode of Critical Hit. My name is S.
And my name is Pitt. And today we're going to break down a rumor we've been seeing out there in the news lately. Well, last couple of years, but heavily it's been in the news lately. Quite a few articles popping up that Apple is going to buy Disney. So we're going to give you a different take here. I'm going to tell you that Apple's not going to buy Disney.
Nope.
And I'm going to tell you why you probably don't want that anyways. So I think at this point, if you've ever watched any of our content on this channel, our proclivities for Disney are pretty well known.
This means war, man.
Hey, this is shit. It's shit.
To sum up, as S just did, we of course we don't like the direction Disney's going in, but I want to take a different perspective on something that's been floating around the news, and that Apple buying Disney sounds great at first glance. Apple has not gone fully to the woke side.
Well, I mean, like, they have-ish, kind of. There was, like, a popular children's novel or a children's franchise little booklet thing that came out, and it's about a frog and a toad, and these are best buddies, and now one is gay.
Yeah, I don't think they need to insert gender identity into
No.
children's books, but I digress. That's a point for another video at this point. But, you know, it sounds good. Not fully woke, not as bad as Disney anyways. And John Lasseter's over at Apple may actually be put back in charge of Pixar.
That's true.
Maybe the magic will return over there. But anyways,
Hopefully.
this may not be as good as it sounds. So this is not normally an economics channel. We only really report on entertainment news. But in order to break down this story, I'm going to need to get a little bit technical to make my points. So while this is about the entertainment industry, I'm going to very lightly speak on economics.
This is very lightly.
Yeah. So let me get to my point first about competition. I'm going to give you an example right now of what less competition or monopoly looks like. So this is about a business industry in Canada. Canada is very protective of their business and industry. Very, very protective. They're very worried, and probably rightly so, that if the US gets into their industries, they'll likely kill all the Canadian businesses.
Yeah?
Think anywhere from flights, telecom, or communication companies, to even the dairy market.
Yeah, even the dairy market.
Actually, funny enough, when NAFTA was renegotiated just a few years ago, one of the big successes that was touted by the U.S., of course, was that they got into the dairy market. They got 3% now in the market share of Canada's dairy market.
Woohoo! 3%! Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this of course makes prices more expensive for Canadians, but again, that's a topic for another video. Really, if you ever want to get into more of that, like I said, though, we'll try to keep it into more of a entertainment mind. Now let's give a recent example of what I mean in Canada. So 2 weeks ago, Cineplex, who owns 75% of the market share of the theaters in Canada, raised their prices for Barbenheimer. Barbieheimer.
Barbenheimer,
that's the name. Barbenheimer. Those two films that came out.
Yeah.
Saying they could do this because it reflects their demand, supply and demand. So they're allowed to do that. If I need to charge an extra $1, an extra $2, no big deal. I can do that because people want to see it.
Anyway.
They have no choice but to pay it. They cited how AMC did it for Batman, but AMC did it, for that one movie. But since then, they've backtracked now. They still have dynamic pricing, but it's really you choose your seat and you pay a little more based on the seat. They can't just charge more for a movie. And the reason they can't is because they only own, I think it's 26% of the market share, and they have to stay competitive. So Cineplex, however, though, touts this as a massive success.
Of course they do.
They're going to keep going on with this practice.
Of course they will.
So Canada, what happened here was they let one company essentially take over an entire industry. And now there's no competition to stop them from doing what they want. So what's going on instead? The government has to fight them. And I've even read that the government's suing them over antitrust laws.
As they should.
They're charging extra money on booking online. They're charging extra money for going to movies. And now the government is suing them for these antitrust laws. But what's going to happen in the end? They're going to get a $50 million, I don't know what their industry is worth, but $50 million slap on the wrist, go about their way, and because they have a monopoly, they're going to keep going about these terrible business practices. Because they can.
Because they can.
And this is what I want to stress. This is why competition is healthy for an economy. Companies want people's business and will make themselves leaner to compete for your business. A monopoly, as we refer to a company that's too big to fail, is just going to take advantage of price gouging, and they always end up paying their executives more because of it. They'll charge you whatever they want. They'll get bailed out anyways. Yep. It never works out for the individual. It only really ever benefits the corporation. So let's put this into context of what we're talking about. Disney is the third biggest streaming service in the world. It's got 158 million subs, worth $162 billion. And Apple, on the other hand, is the 9th biggest streaming service in the world with 40 million subs, but it's worth over $3.09 trillion. And to put that into context, it is the biggest company in the world. The second biggest is Microsoft with $2.5 trillion. So they are significantly bigger than any other company, realistically. Even Microsoft, really.
That's quite a bit.
So what if Apple buys Disney? Like I said, this sounds great at first. John Lasseter back in charge of Pixar. And Tim Cook, he seems like a much better CEO than Bob Iger. Holy
Doesn't
smokes.
he, though?
At least on the face level, I think. Although I think
paper.
no one is more hated than Bob Iger at the moment as a CEO.
No, that man could like fall off a cliff and people would cheer.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't want to take sides in the SAG-AFTRA deal. I think he had some points with against those writers and against the actors, but I digress about that topic. I don't really want to take sides there. Bob Iger in general can do no right at the moment. But what if, let's just say what if, we have a changing of the guard with Apple? What if Apple becomes the most woke company in the world?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
So let's give an example here before we get into that. Let's go through Star Wars. George Lucas loved his fans, and he wanted to give them what he wanted. It was pretty evident. Let's go through episode 1.
Loved episode 1.
It was really good, but there was one glaring issue in episode 1. Well, I mean, there was a couple.
There
glaring
was a
issues.
prime character.
But Jar Jar Binks, I'm going to hit on here.
Oh, I loved him.
Nobody liked Jar Jar Binks, and so what did George Lucas do?
Listen, guys, I listened to
He
you.
listened.
No
He
worries.
listened. He's
I
like,
hear you.
I don't-
I'm gonna get him out.
Yeah, he thought he was going to be like the next R2D2. He's like, whoa, the fans don't like him. I'm going to get him out of there.
Sorry, my bad. Wrong choice.
So, but to stress my point here, George Lucas was a great CEO when it came down to it, and he loved his fans. But Lucasfilms would have also had no choice but to switch course because that's how they made their money. They had a few excellent films.
Yeah.
They had some games. In fact, Knights of the Republic, the first one is still like my favorite game of all time, or at least in the top 3. And it had some really good books. It did. But if fans stop liking those franchises, those properties, that means no money. And at Lucasfilms or Lucas Studios, if you have no money, you either are forced to change or you go out of business. That's it. So it's important that people understand that if the smaller a company is, the more likely it is to respect the fans.
Exactly. Or even respect the properties that they're producing.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, because they have to respect them, because the fans are what make it. You can get the one good guy, but you can also ensure a company will respect it, because they have to, because that's how they make their money.
Exactly.
Now let's look at Disney. In the same light. They know nobody liked the sequel trilogy.
Well, no fucking shit.
And they regularly attack the fans over everything. Everyone was called a racist, misogynist, whenever it came down to anything they did with Star Wars.
Every ism.
Anything they do in Phase 4 of the MCU or MCU.
MCU.
Yeah. But they have so much money, or they consider themselves essentially one of those too big to fail companies. They're not actually technically on the list, but they consider themselves that. And they just don't really have to care or respect the people who made the franchises what they are today.
No, it says fuck you, fans. I don't need to listen to you.
They say to hell with it. And I don't have to create anything new. I can just make whatever you loved, I could turn it into what I like now.
Because they have a guarantee that half the fans are going to go see that movie just to give it the time of day, being like, you know what? I believe you. You made a movie that's good. Goes in, completely not great.
Well, yeah, honestly, I think they're losing all their fans nowadays.
They are losing
They're
all
a little
their fans.
front-loaded in their last ones, but Ant-Man, I mean, they're losing money. You can't sustain this business model. But they have so much money, or had like $28 billion in working capital last year. Obviously, it's diminishing, but they have so much working capital, and their theme parks have been such a cash cow, again, diminishing now, but that they didn't have to care as much. And so, to put that again into context for some other franchises they have, what did we like when the MCU first went to Disney? It wasn't half bad for like 5, 6, even 7 years.
No, not until it became the MCU.
Yeah, it wasn't always perfect, but they definitely had some really good prospects
because
to it.
Robert Downey Jr. was a man in a role.
Well, I
Like
just
he
mean
does.
they let those companies. I mean, Perlmutter probably had something to do as well, but I just mean they let those franchises be good at first. That's my point.
Exactly.
Pixar was good at first. They had really good films at first. Then they got rid of John
Then
Lasseter.
they went to Disney.
Well, no, they were already at Disney, but they were pretty good as long as they stuck around and kept John Lasseter around. Star Wars maybe never was really successful under Disney. Rogue One was actually pretty good, I guess. And yeah, no, it was a pretty good movie, I
But
think.
even then, aren't you
Ish.
talking about Acolyte?
Yeah, but people have lost interest now. But this is where my point is. is we all hope Disney right now fails to save our beloved franchises. And really, it's still small enough to fail. But we enjoyed it for the first couple of years. We did, for most of them. So going back to Apple now, what if they go to Apple? What if they sell to Apple? And for the next 2, 3, or even 5 years, it's fantastic. And they do fantastic with those franchises. They make them what we love again. Well, what if, let's just say, the way all corporations are going now, stakeholder capitalism, what if Apple becomes the wokest of them all?
Yeah, they're going to like rope you in and bring you in with all the good things and the good vibes that they're bringing from your movies, and all of a sudden they're just like, bam, slap you with a whole bunch of woke shit.
And so that's my point. What hope do we ever have at that point of a franchise being saved? At least we have hope with Disney that it can turn around. But with Apple, because I mean, if you didn't think Disney cared about those franchises, they don't care about the individual fan. What makes you think a company now that's worth over 19 times as much as them ever would? And so that's my point. Maybe you don't want Apple to buy Disney. I mean, short term it may sound good, but buying Disney just means less competition. And the bigger a company is, the less they ever care about the individual fan.
It's true.
That's for sure. So, I mean, like I said, you have the right guy there now, but as soon as John Lasseter leaves, I don't know Tim Cook is specifically what he stands for, but as soon as he leaves, what happens then? And with the way corporations are going nowadays, with the way the ESG is being pushed, I can't see it being a good thing going to a bigger corporation. Not unless there's a major shift in economics.
No.
In the macroeconomic cycle.
The way with that, I'm pretty sure any company who gets a hold of it won't do very well.
Yeah, so smaller companies will, because they have to care. They have to care about their customer. So that's why you might not want it to happen. But let me get into the why it won't. Or why it most likely won't happen.
No.
So as I said, Apple is the biggest company in the world, worth over $3 trillion. And when they try to acquire or merger with another company, do an acquisition, they have to do a whole bunch of work to get an acquisition done, of course. But one thing that comes very much under scrutiny at this point is a big company, or any company that's in the billions of dollars range, has to go through a whole bunch of antitrust laws. Now, the average merger in the States was about 16 months in 2022, but that's the average merger. Now we're talking about a $3 trillion company, or the number one company, buying like the number, I think it's 83 company, or $162 billion company being purchased by a $3 trillion company. And Bob Iger only extended his contract to the end of 2026. If we know an average merger, or going through a bunch of antitrust laws, takes about 16 months, the biggest company has to drive through a whole bunch of hoops. If Apple wants to do this kind of deal, they better start the deal proceedings yesterday to get this kind of acquisition started and through the Bureau of Competition.
They're cutting a bit close.
And that's if. And if, that's a big if, the Bureau of Competition would even let that happen. I know Apple is wealthy, and I get it. They're the most liquid company in the world. They have tons of cash, and they can throw out a whole bunch of money at lobbyists in Washington. But this would be the 4th largest acquisition ever done by the biggest company in the world. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that with these factors, limited amount of time, biggest company acquiring such another big one, I'm saying it's highly improbable. Now maybe Apple's going to acquire some part of Disney. The TV services, Bob Iger's talked about selling them. ESPN, maybe.
A trickle effect of assets.
Maybe they'll give away some. But either way, the franchises we going to these bigger corporations is not the right solution. It's not the answer we want. Because even if it's short-term looks good, it's only going to hurt it long-term. It only ever does. In fact, this is like exactly why we have antitrust laws to begin with. This is why we need them. We want franchises in the hands of people who care, or in what I've been talking about, people who are forced to care. We want people forced to care what the fans think.
Forced to care, yeah.
Stop attacking your fans. Stop. You need to respect your fans. That's who make you have a job. Mm-hmm. It's not the company paying you. Yeah, sure, directly, but realistically, it's the fans that make it successful that you get paid through.
Do you know what's funny? Do you remember when Sonic came out and the fans were just absolutely mad to the fact that how Sonic looked?
And they
changed
it. Sega changed it, yeah, absolutely.
Changed it right away. Disney, take notes.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is you have to care about what the fans want, and if you go to these big companies, it's not going to happen. But like I said, I also don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the timing's there. I think the antitrust laws are way too big, and even Apple with its massive monetary might, I don't think has quite a bit enough to get it through in 2 years like this. But anyways, that's all I got. Do you have anything else?
No, I have nothing else to say.
Well, anyways, thanks for joining us for this one, guys. If you made it with us till this point, let us know what you think in the comments. I know what I said might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but I hope at least give you something to think about. If you disagree, let me know, and we'll see you in the next video.
See you guys in the next video. Toodles!
Bye, guys.